Let's begin rigging the neck and head. Now I wanted to bring up our reference again so we can point out a few critical areas we'll want to make sure we get just right in order for the head to be able to reach the surface ultimately so the horse can eat. Alright, so the main thing is to get the base of the neck to pivot properly from the right point. So we'll actually need to deviate slightly from our reference in order to get that to work. And then the last thing we'll want to point out is the very end of the neck vertebrae. We just want to make sure that that gets placed in the right spot in order for the head to rotate properly. So you can see that that's at the top of the horse's skull and right behind the ear. So let's go ahead and make sure that we get those solidified in order for the horse to deform naturally. Okay, let's move over to our side view and we'll grab our thorax helper. What we're going to do is go ahead and clone this object. We'll rename this to PT-DRV neck anchor 01. So the base of the neck will start at this point. However, we'll want to move this down and forward. Alright, so we actually want our neck rig to start at about this point here. If you need a reference point, you can see the scapula control is, again, higher than our helper. So we just want to make sure that we place this at about this point so that when the neck starts to move as we start to have the head rotate down, again, the horse is now able to eat. So I'll go ahead and set the helper size to about 10. It doesn't need to be so large. And we'll want this linked back to PT-NV thorax. Alright, great. We're now ready to create the spline that we'll use to snap our neck bones to. So let's go ahead and head over to our Create panel. We'll grab our Line tool. And we're just going to go ahead and start by creating our first point right on top of our helper that we've just made. And I'll go ahead and drag out so we are given a tangent handle to modify. Then our last point, again, this is going to be the end of the neck chain and where the head would pivot from. So we'll go ahead and snap this point right at the top of the skull behind the ear. We'll go ahead and pull this out so we get some nice curvature in the neck. Okay, great. So now I'll go ahead and right click to exit our Line tool. What we could do at this point is head over to our Modify panel and snap our endpoint of our spline so that it's right on top of our helper. Might be easiest to do that from the perspective view, so I'll go ahead and take care of that. Let's go ahead and zoom in, grab the endpoint. Do have the link tool active, so might want to go ahead and use the translate tool. Alright, so next I'll go ahead and head over to the snap settings. I'll turn off grid snap and enable vertex snap, or for that matter, we can go ahead and work with pivot snap just so we can get right to the helper center, and let's go ahead and snap to that spot. Okay, great. So exiting snap, we'll now go ahead and check the top point. Let's go back to our side view just to make sure that we have that in the right location. So we might want to go ahead and bring that forward a little bit more, and I think that'll be good to go. Let's go ahead and rename this to SPL_neck01, and we'll have this stored in objects to hide. Now what we're going to do is clone this in order to have a spline to snap our bones to. So that clone spline will only be used for snapping our bone objects. Once we're finished with that, we can go ahead and remove it and use this spline to connect into our spline IK. So let's go ahead and, again, clone the spline. No need to rename this because we will be removing it. However, what I'd like to do is add this to a temp layer. So with it selected, we'll just go ahead and create a new layer. No need to rename the layer at all because we can remove it once we're finished. But now let's go ahead and hide our objects to hide layer. And with the spline selected, we'll head over to modifiers, patch spline editing, and go ahead and normalize it. Okay, great. So at this point, we can go ahead and head over to our display tab and turn on vertex ticks just to check the spacing. So we want about 8 bone objects. And right now it's set to about 10, so we can go ahead and check this. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So you can see that we just need to make a slight tweak to the end of our spline. So what I'll do here is head back over to the modify panel. I'll go ahead and right click and collapse the spline down. And then heading over to our vertex of object level, I'll go ahead and delete the second to last point, grab our very last point, and just go ahead and drag that back just a little bit more. Okay, great. So here's the spline we'll use to snap our bones to. Alright, so at this point, we're ready to stop the lesson. And in the next lesson, we'll go ahead and set up those neck bones.